July 14th. The rain had already been falling for hours, thick, relentless, smearing across windshields and blackening the asphalt. Most truckers pulled over by then. Most. But not Tom Delaney. Tom was still on the road. Highway 93, a stretch of Nevada two-lane that cuts through nothing but desert, rusted signs, and miles of forgotten silence. No street lights, no cell towers, just sky, asphalt, and whatever decides to travel with you once the sun goes down. At exactly 2:37 a.m., Tom's 18-wheeler was found parked on the shoulder. Lights off, engine warm, hazard blinkers dead, driver's side door wide open. Tom was gone. No blood, no signs of a struggle. His coffee was still full in the cup holder. His bag still zipped behind the seat. Wallet untouched. And then there was the dash cam, or what was left of it. The final 3 seconds of audio were corrupted, except for one line. Oh, raspy. Recorded so faintly you have to turn the volume all the way up. He's inside. That was the last anyone ever heard from Tom Delaney. Since then, more than a dozen truckers have refused to take night routes through that stretch of 93. Dispatchers won't talk about it. Even the local police, when pressed for details, just shake their heads and say, some cases aren't meant to be solved. But one question remains, one no one has been able to answer. How does a man vanish from a locked truck in the middle of a storm with no tracks and no sound except rain? This is the story of a routine trip that never ended. And it begins hours earlier, when Tom pulled into a gas station outside Reno, unaware that every mile he drove that night was taking him further from the world he knew. Tom Delaney was 48 years old, a veteran of the road, the kind of man whose entire life was mapped in miles, state to state, way station to way station, mile marker to mile marker. He wasn't famous. He wasn't flashy. But out there on the highways, in that world where most people just passed through, Tom was known. To dispatchers, he was dependable. To other drivers, he was one of the quiet ones. Didn't talk much on the CB. Didn't waste time with small talk at the truck stops. He kept his receipts in order, double-checked his latches, and always got the job done. He drove alone. Preferred it that way. A thermos of black coffee, a hard plastic cooler filled with sandwiches and bottled water, and his logbook. That was Tom's world. Predictable. Measured. Safe. His route that day was simple. Pick up a double trailer in Reno. Head north on 80. Then east on 93 toward Twin Falls. About 430 miles total. Done it dozens of times. Day or night, rain or shine. Never once had an issue. That morning he left home early. The usual. Stopped at a gas station in Sparks, Chevron off exit 19. Filled up. Grabbed a breakfast sandwich and 2 packs of gum. Surveillance footage shows him at the counter. Baseball cap. Red flannel jacket. Nothing out of the ordinary. At 6:42 p.m. he sent a text to his wife, Melissa. Storm's rolling in. Might be late. Love you. There was no reply. She was in the kitchen making dinner. She'd never hear from him again. At 7:15, Tom rolled out of the Reno depot with his load. The weather was calm at first. Sky overcast but quiet. Long, low clouds hanging just above the mountains. Air heavy but still. At 7:49 he passed through Wadsworth. Nothing unusual. No signs of distress. No erratic driving. He was ahead of schedule. But then at 8:21 p.m., something shifted. Tom came on the CB. His voice calm but lower than usual. He reached out to Jim Koenig, a fellow driver who'd left the Reno yard an hour earlier and was now roughly 15 miles up the road. You catch a look at that car that's been hugging the median for the last 5 exits? Jim said no. said he hadn't seen any tail lights behind him for miles. Tom didn't push it, didn't argue, just let it drop, until a few minutes later when he keyed up again. "Feels like someone's tailing me." Those were his exact words. Not panicked, not nervous, just bothered. Jim offered to wait for him at the next rest stop near Imlay, but Tom hesitated, then responded, "Nah, gonna push through." It was the last casual conversation Tom Delaney ever had. The rain came fast. Art. Not a slow build, not a warning drizzle, just a wall of water slamming against the windshield, reducing visibility to feet. The kind of downpour that swallows headlights and flattens even the loudest diesel engine into silence. According to traffic cameras, most vehicles on that stretch had already pulled off. Only 3 big rigs were logged continuing north on Highway 93 past 9 p.m. Tom was one of them. His GPS showed him slowing down, dropping from 60 to 50, then to 40. Hazards on. He was somewhere between exits. No lights, no services, just the black desert around him and that endless stretch of broken pavement. And still he kept going. The location of his final ping, logged at 9:43 p.m., was a narrow curve just past the old Eureka exit. No shoulder, no cameras, no sign of construction, just road, then nothing. No turn signal, no emergency call, no final log entry. The truck kept moving for another 26 miles before it came to a stop near the shoulder, idling. Lights off, driver's side door ajar. When investigators pulled the GPS logs, they confirmed the vehicle had come to a complete stop at 10:12 p.m. But there was no indication why. No alerts, no alarms, just stillness. And one thing stood out, one thing that didn't make sense. There were no skid marks, no sudden braking, no swerve, just a perfect, calculated stop in the middle of nowhere, like someone had pulled over and waited. But for what or for who, no one could explain. The seat was pushed back, the radio was still on, the thermos sat untouched, and Tom Delaney was gone. The Puckerbrush Rest area isn't marked on most modern maps. It's not the kind of stop drivers talk about. There's no vending machine, no cameras, no Wi-Fi. Just cracked pavement, one rusted sign half swallowed by brush, and an old restroom building locked up years ago after an incident no one ever explains clearly. It sits along Highway 93 like a scar, unmaintained, unlit, mostly forgotten. But Tom pulled in. At 11:21 p.m., his rig rolled to a full stop near the far end of the rest area. Logs confirm he didn't shut off the engine. He didn't even shift into park right away. He just sat there, foot on the brake, the hum of the diesel idling beneath him. Rain lashed the windshield in uneven waves, streaking the glass, distorting the view. Wiper blades passed over again and again. Still, it was hard to see. And then, through that curtain of water, he noticed something. Standing on the gravel near the tree line just far enough back to stay hidden, was a figure. It wasn't moving. It wasn't trying to get his attention. It was just there. A man by shape. Slouched posture. Gaunt outline. Ragged clothes. Soaked through. Hair matted against his forehead. He had no umbrella. No gear. No truck. Nothing that suggested he belonged there. And yet he didn't look lost. He didn't look injured. He looked like he was waiting. Tom leaned forward. He wasn't the type to pick up hitchhikers. He'd driven past stranded motorists before. Company policy was clear. No unauthorized riders. Period. But there was something about this man that made Tom hesitate. Not sympathy. Not fear. Confusion. Because when Tom blinked, the man had taken a step forward, almost imperceptibly, just enough to be closer. just enough to be noticed. Tom glanced to the side mirror. Nothing. He leaned over slightly, checking the passenger side view. Still nothing. But then came the static. Low at first, just a soft hiss through the CB radio. He reached for the dial, thinking it might be bleed from another channel. But the sound didn't behave like standard interference. It didn't rise and fall. It didn't skip. It grew. Underneath the static there was something else. A layered sound. Too human to be electrical. Too rhythmic to be wind. Almost like breathing. He adjusted the frequency again. And that's when a faint voice pushed through the crackle. Only one word. Drawn out. Barely audible beneath the storm and hum of the cab. Hey. Tom froze. It hadn't come from the radio. It hadn't come from outside. It came from behind him. The sleeper berth curtain was drawn shut. He stared at it for 5 full seconds. No movement. No noise. Just that awful sense that he was no longer alone. He turned fully in his seat, slow, deliberate. Still nothing. No shadows. No handprints. No sign of entry. He reached for his phone. 11:47 p.m. He typed the message quickly. He asked if I had room in the cab. I said no. He just smiled. He hit send. He didn't elaborate. Didn't call. Didn't try to explain the rest. Because at that moment, Tom didn't understand what he was experiencing either. And maybe he didn't want to. The next 60 seconds remain undocumented. No dashcam footage. No GPS reroute. No audio. Just silence. But somewhere in that minute something changed. When the engine revved again and the rig pulled out of the lot, it was no longer responding the way it should. Speed inconsistent. No use of the turn signal. Manual override triggered, according to the diagnostics pulled later. Tom was driving, but his inputs didn't match the behavior of the truck. He didn't radio back in. Didn't follow standard procedure for re-entering the highway. He just left the rest stop. No lights behind him. No headlights ahead. Just the sound of wet tires on pavement. And the whisper of something unseen moving behind the sleeper curtain. Tom Delaney made his final transmission. He didn't begin with a call sign. He didn't follow radio protocol. The message was unstructured, abrupt, off balance in a way that didn't match the Tom dispatchers knew. The first words were muffled by background noise, but the line stabilized just long enough for one sentence to come through clearly. There's breathing coming from behind the curtain. I didn't let anyone in. Then, nothing. Not a click. Not static. Just an unnatural cut, like the line had been severed mid-air. The dispatcher froze. For a few seconds she thought maybe it was a glitch, cell overlap, a weather interruption, even a headset issue. But the line didn't come back. Not once. She tried calling again. Switched to the backup channel. Then the emergency band. Still silence. At 12:11, the signal from Tom's GPS was lost. It wasn't turned off. It simply vanished from the tracking map, like the icon had been erased. Most GPS malfunctions are temporary, disruptions from tunnels, terrain, or poor satellite connection. But Tom wasn't near a mountain. He wasn't near anything. He was supposed to be approaching mile marker 114, a flat stretch of desert flanked by dead brush and old telephone poles that haven't worked in years. No buildings. No obstructions. Just straight, exposed road. And yet, he disappeared from the grid. For 6 hours, no one knew where the truck was. No driver spotted it. No camera flagged it. No alert came in. The rig was finally located at 6:23 a.m. A passing Department of Transportation crew noticed a trailer parked at an unusual angle near the edge of a drainage culvert. It wasn't crashed. It wasn't jackknifed. It had simply pulled off and stopped, deliberately, cleanly. The left blinker was still active, ticking away. The engine was running. The driver's side door stood open. The air smelled of wet vinyl and diesel. The cabin interior was quiet. Wipers still moved across the windshield, dragging streaks of water over dry glass. The rain had slowed to a mist by then. The sky was gray. The sun, just beginning to rise behind a bank of clouds, cast no light inside the cab. Investigators arrived shortly after. They approached with caution, unsure if this was an abandoned vehicle, a medical emergency, or worse. The driver's seat was empty. The steering wheel still slightly warm. Tom's coffee sat in the cup holder, half full, undisturbed. His phone was on the dash. His keys in the ignition. His boots were on the floor where he always kicked them off before resting. No signs of a struggle. No broken glass. No blood. No prints out of place. But the sleeper berth told a different story. The curtain that separated the cab from the back was no longer drawn neatly across the rail. It had been yanked, violently, one side still clinging to the rod, the other torn off and twisted downward, caught on the metal frame. When they pulled it back, what they saw was confusing. The mattress was shredded, not cut, not torn with a knife, ripped by uneven pressure, chunks of foam exposed, cloth twisted and pulled outward as if something had been gripping from within. The lower wall panel was scratched, 3 deep grooves that dug through the vinyl into the underlying wood. Parallel lines, uneven depth, no signs of a blade, not the kind of marks made by hands or tools, no evidence of another person inside, no foreign hair, no fluid, no footprints, no DNA, just those marks. And one more thing. When the forensics team inspected the floorboard beneath the open door, they noticed the puddle. It had collected rainwater, but only in the indent where water pooled naturally. No disturbance, no imprint, the kind of undisturbed water you only see when nothing has stepped through it, which raised the question. If the door was opened and Tom exited the vehicle, why didn't he leave tracks? And if he didn't open the door, then who did? Search teams combed the surrounding area for the next 48 hours. Helicopters scanned a 15-mile radius. Dogs picked up no scent. Thermal imaging showed no signs of body heat. No discarded clothing. No signs of animal interference. The desert gave nothing back. Tom Delaney had simply vanished. One officer, who had served for 22 years in that region, said afterward, "I've worked triple homicides that made more sense than this. To this day the truck sits in impound. No one has requested it. No company wants to reassign it." Tom's family was given his personal effects. Phone, wallet, ring. His CB log was scrubbed. The audio from his last transmission, sealed in a digital evidence file, was flagged under anomalous. The sound engineers were never able to determine if the line was broken from inside the vehicle or from somewhere else. And yet, one detail stood out, found during a later inspection of the audio clip, when a noise technician enhanced the final few milliseconds. After Tom says, "I didn't let anyone in," there is a faint sound, barely audible, right before the cut. A single intake of breath. Sure. What? Very close to the microphone, as if someone or something was standing just inches behind him. And then, silence. Tom Delaney's rig was towed to an impound yard on the outskirts of Elko County the same afternoon it was discovered. Standard protocol. What followed wasn't. Normally, in a case like this, the vehicle becomes a timeline. It tells the story when the person can't. What time the seatbelt came off. When the brakes were last used. How fast the rig was going when it stopped. But Tom's truck didn't tell anything. Not clearly. The seatbelt was unlatched. But there was no sign of him leaving. No pressure on the door frame. No residue on the handle. No shift in the seat sensors. His fingerprint was on the gear lever, but only one. And even that was smeared, partially wiped, as though someone had touched it right after him, and then removed their hand without leaving a trace. The sleeper berth told more. The shredded fabric. The deep, crooked gouges in the foam. The curtain rod, snapped at one end, still hanging on the other. Every investigator, one by one, asked the same question. If someone attacked him, where are the prints? If he left, where are the tracks? If no one entered, what did this? When the results came back from the state lab, they said what everyone already knew. No foreign DNA. No skin. No hair. No oils. No evidence of another body, human or otherwise, ever being in that cab. Except for one thing. The dash cam. It had not been physically damaged. Its mount was intact. Its wires were connected. The storage card was present. But the footage told a different story. Or rather, almost no story at all. From 11:33 p.m. to 12:04 a.m., the window during which Tom sent his final transmission, the footage is corrupted. All of it. No highway. No dashboard lights. No cabin. Just an undulating black frame filled with occasional flashes of gray static. Like a signal trying to push through something that wasn't letting it. Sound was scrambled until the final 3 seconds. 3 seconds the camera managed to record before it died entirely. And those 3 seconds were different. No static. No movement. Only stillness. Only sound. The angle of the shot suggests the camera had shifted, pointed slightly lower than usual, now angled toward the divider curtain between the cab and sleeper berth. The audio, enhanced and isolated later in the lab, is brief. It captures the sound of the windshield wipers, a slight mechanical hum, and then, very close to the mic, 2 words: open the door. Not shouted, not whispered like a secret, spoken with no urgency, no emotion. The analysis of the voice was inconclusive. It was male, but too degraded to determine pitch. It didn't match Tom. It didn't match any dispatcher or known voice in the vehicle's recording logs. And it didn't match the speech patterns of any previously logged CB interference. It was, by all accounts, an orphan frequency. Alone. Unclaimed. Unexplained. Word of the case started to spread. Not through press releases, not on the news, but through the drivers. Over radio channels, truck stop conversations, highway meetups. Soft talk between men who knew what they saw and knew they wouldn't be believed. And one name kept returning. The Hitcher. Not a code. Not a nickname given to a suspect. A warning. You don't see him unless you're alone. You don't see him unless you're tired. You don't see him unless something's already followed you too far. Some say he waits near old telephone poles, where the road hums differently. Some say you only notice him when your high beams stop catching things they should. Others describe seeing a man standing near the shoulder, always far enough away to be unclear. Never walking, never raising a hand, just standing, drenched, soaked through by rain that doesn't seem to touch the road around him. And always at night, always when visibility is low, when your thoughts drift, when you stop checking the mirror because nothing's been behind you for hours. They say he knocks softly, not always on the door, sometimes just on the walls of the trailer, sometimes on the floor beneath the bunk. One knock, then 2, then a pause, and if you don't answer, he waits. If you do, he climbs in. One retired driver, anonymous, described a moment in the Nevada desert during a thunderstorm in 2009. I was north of Ely, pulled off for coffee, took a minute in the sleeper to stretch. That's when I heard the latch click. Passenger door. It didn't open, but it unlocked. just like that. And I knew I hadn't touched it. He never finished that route. He quit a week later. Never drove long haul again. When asked what he saw, he only replied, "Once you notice him, you start hearing him, even when you're parked somewhere safe." They left the truck parked in the yard for nearly a month. Nobody claimed it. Nobody requested it be returned to the fleet. It just sat there, motionless, like something that had fulfilled its purpose and no longer knew what it was supposed to be. The seat still carried the imprint of a driver who hadn't been seen since. The curtain, even when repaired, refused to hang straight. The CB radio powered on but never connected. No company driver wanted it reassigned. One junior dispatcher joked it was cursed. No one laughed. Eventually it was sold, quietly, without press or paperwork, to a buyer no one could name. And just like that, it was gone. Some people still talk about it. A handful of truckers, old-timers mostly, say Tom got scared. Say he panicked and ran into the desert. Got lost. Turned around in the dark. Others think he suffered a breakdown. Too many years on the road. Too much solitude. Too many nights driving through nowhere with nothing but static and darkness for company. But the ones who knew him, they don't say much. They just shake their heads. Because there's no sign he left that truck. No prints. No footprints. No trail. Just the damage to the berth. The whisper on the dashcam. The single message. He asked if I had room in the cab. I said no. He just smiled. And the one detail no one can shake, that he said he heard breathing behind the curtain, even though no one had come in. Ask yourself this: if you were on that highway, miles from the nearest light, radio silent, rain coming down like it was trying to wash the world away, would you stop if you saw someone standing there? Would you open the door? Would you look in the mirror if you heard something breathing behind you? Or would you just keep driving, knowing what they say, that once you notice him, he doesn't need to be invited. He's already inside. And if your cab is quiet enough, he might start to speak. If this story stayed with you, if it made you look twice at the dark stretch between here and nowhere, like the video, comment what you think happened to Tom. And subscribe, because some roads don't show up on GPS. And some passengers don't wait to be picked up.